So now let's go back to the hull here, and I will make that the current surface, and we'll turn off the decks. And we had a separate layer here called hull curves, and let's start displaying some of those. We grouped them. We had the upper deck curves here between the second deck and main deck that we used to create our original mesh. And as you'll recall, we used the 1 meter increment along the length of the curve to create sort of a set of smooth stiffener traces along the length. And when the hull got larger due to some flare and shear, it added extra lines there in the trace up at the bow, started introducing an extra stiffener. So now we'll do something similar with the lower hull. So we'll turn the surfaces back on, and I know this is at this bottom deck is at 2 meters, this is at 7, and this is at 12. So what I'll do is I'll come into this top view, and we'll make a large cutting plane. We use the plane corner to corner, and there's several different methods for creating planes, but usually when you're just creating these temporary cutting planes, corner to corner is quickest and easiest, and you can just drag a large rectangle to make sure it encompasses everything. And then it's at the baseline, so I can either manually use the set point command, or I could use the gumball. If we wanted to use the gumball, we could say move this 2 meters, and I can hit Control C, Control V to make a copy of it. And this time I'll use the set point command, and we'll just set the Z value here, and I'm going to make it at 7. Grab all of these curves. Now they're still being selected as a group, and when I split them, they're even the split versions of the curves will still be in that group. They retain their membership in the group. We'll take them. We'll ungroup them in a minute, and we could do that before or after the split, but just for demonstration purposes, we'll leave them in there for now. So I have all my curves selected. We'll use the split command, and I'll drag a crossing window to select both of the planes. And you can see 144 curves split into 407 pieces. So we can delete our cutting surfaces there. And if I select the curves, it appears to be no change because they're still grouped. If I ungroup them, then we can see how they got split. Now I just want to work one deck at a time, so what I'll do is I'll grab these ones at the bottom, and I'll put them in a group, and we'll grab these curves, and I'm going to unselect these. This one is actually below the cut, so I want to get rid of that one as well. So these are all the ones that are above 7 meters, and I'll group them. And now I can be a little lazy when I create this group and just make it a little extra large, because as long as it's not fully encompassing those groups, they won't be selected. And I'll group those. And I can hide the 2 lower ones because we'll work on them later. We're just going to go one deck at a time because we don't want our stringers, the shell stringers, crossing the deck. So we'll hide those. Now what we did the last time was starting at the lower deck, we did 1 meter increments going up. So if we try and recreate that, first thing I'll do is I'll ungroup these curves because we don't want to be selecting those ones in the bow because they're not starting at the deck. And we'll check the direction. They're all pointed upward. And these back aft are starting on center line, so that's obviously not how the stringer is going to run around the deck. And this was where I made in direction. So I just reversed the direction of that one. So let me hit escape to turn that off. I will select all the curves, unselect those long ones that run to the center line. I don't know why that curve isn't hidden, so we'll just hide it. All curves again, unselect those that start at the center line, unselect those at the bow. That was a small temporary curve I used for projecting in the previous session. It should be deleted, but for now I'll just unselect it so we don't generate points on it. And what I did this morning was I went ahead and created the point objects, divide curve by, and I said length of segments. Oops, that's number of segments. I said length of segments, and I gave it 1 meter. And I went ahead and created my curves. And then I realized, looking down here, that if I follow that pattern along the length, I've got the stiffeners wrapping around that tight radius in the hull, which is most likely not how they would be building it. Now, again, if you had your stiffener traces from the structural drawings, you'd just be modeling exactly to those lines. Here, we're just looking for something reasonable, but obviously that is not a reasonable stiffener pattern in this area. So I thought I would throw out a few more going forward. And that's when I decided, okay, we've got this fairly sharp corner, and we want the side shell stiffeners to sort of be continuous going down the side, and we want the bottom shell stiffeners being sort of continuous along the bottom. And when they start to hit each other in the bilge radius, we'll just terminate them at a convenient frame. And hit undo to get rid of those points, and we'll turn on the curves again. So we'll display these, and you can see we've got, you know, a fairly tight, terribly tight, but tighter than you'd want to wrap a stiffener around radius there. So, and then if we look at our actual structure for the bulkheads and everything, we have a deck hitting the side shell here. So we know our stiffener traces are going to be somewhat evenly distributed, at least between those decks. So for on the side shell, between the second and third deck, we probably want to come back to at least this bulkhead. And for the next one down, that 2 meter deck ends here. So those are going to be relatively continuous and evenly spaced back to this bulkhead. So we'll split these up, and what we'll do is we'll regroup all of our curves. We will take the curves from here aft and treat them as a unit, and we'll break them up later. We'll work down from the deck and out from the center line when we go to create the stiffener traces on here, which determine our node locations for the mesh. And then for the set of curves in this region, we'll go everything below the deck here, everything below the second deck down to center line. And let me turn off surfaces to make these a little easier to select. So yeah, we want from that point aft. So we'll grab all of these curves and let's make a group. That way they're a little easier to select. I can select the rest of them here, and I will unselect that group, and I'll put these forward ones in a group. For this next set, turn on the surfaces, and we'll ungroup those curves. I want this curve and everything aft. So we'll grab all of those, and I can select the group above. And since we know that the groups can be nested, what I'll do is I'll ungroup. So now this is just a collection of curves, and I'll regroup. The other thing I can do is that these are still separate curves, upper and lower. So I'll hit the join command, and I'll join them back into single curves. So we have 28 curves joined into 19. So now these are our full curves again. And we'll go in here. And for the next set, we know we want to go from this curve aft. So we'll grab all of those and make a group. We'll grab all the ones forward and make a group. We still need a portion of the curves from here. So if we ungroup these, we know we want that one and everything aft of it. Get merged in with this set. So we will ungroup, group, and then join. Actually, they need to be joined into this upper one. So again, we ungroup, kind of mark that curve. Grabs both the group and that collection of curves above it. So I will ungroup and regroup, and we can join. So now those 40 curves are down to 20. So now we have a collection of curves there, and all of these upper curves. Oops, I didn't want to. Luckily, it was unable to join. I'm going to undo that join. That actually was the join in here. So we'll join them. We'll group that. Okay, so now we have groups of curves organized the way we wanted them.